The question we need to answer is there a Poshmark algorithm? And if there is, how do you crack it?
Yes, this is the age-old question on Poshmark.
It is,
Everyone wants to know if there is an algorithm and how to best position yourself in the algorithm so that it favors you.
yeah, if you type in Poshmark to any Google engine, into any I don't know, YouTube search, this is the question on everyone's mind. So we decided that it was time to revisit kind of an old video we did
Yeah.
where we talked about the Poshmark algorithm, I think back in 2022, and kind of just come back and talk about what it is. Does it exist? Is it real? Is it something I have to pray to? What is it? So let's just start with, is there a Poshmark algorithm?
Yes, that's how computers work. I don't understand the premise. Obviously, yes, there is an algorithm.
There is a Poshmark algorithm. This is something that I think we just needed to get out of the way first because it seems to be a question in the community. So I don't know. Do you want to explain what an algorithm is for people
Yeah,
who may
I
not
think there's
know?
a fundamental misunderstanding of what an algorithm is or what people mean when they say that. And the first thing that you need to be aware of is that all computer programs have some form of algorithm or, for lack of a better word, computer code as how they operate and how they make decisions. So, yes, how Poshmark orders the listings based off the search criteria is based off of an algorithm of some kind.
Yeah. So anything that you use on the internet that has any kind of search criteria, there will be an algorithm. I mean, Google has one. YouTube has one. I mean, TikTok has one. Whatever you can think of, there is an algorithm involved because what the intention is that when you, the user, types in something that you're looking for, the algorithm is going to give you the most relevant result that they feel you're looking for. And this also means that an algorithm is constantly changed, adjusted, tweaked because people like us are trying to figure out how do we get our stuff to the top of the search. And sometimes that means that people are going to do things that make the search results not as relevant for the user. So the platforms and other places have to constantly iterate to make sure that the search results are still relevant. They're not just like, things that people kind of
Yeah.
use to game the system.
I mean, basically, in the simplest terms, it's the Poshmark's goal is to sell items. So they're taking the if statement from the buyer, going, if I'm looking for this item, what do I find?
Yeah.
So then they show you this item.
Yeah. Now, do we think that Poshmark's algorithm is good? That's a different
I mean,
question.
if we're ranking it on should we pray to it, we should pray to avoid its wrath.
Yes. So different platforms again have different algorithms and different quality of algorithms. Google's algorithm, for example, is pretty top tier. That's why they're Google. Where Poshmark, mm, we've had some issues with their algorithm, and we'll get into like what you need to do to kind of get into the algorithm's good graces. But eBay also has a different algorithm. Macari has a different algorithm. They're all different, and they're all going to require different things to kind of get to the top. So I think we should just kind of look at how do you pop up on Poshmark algorithm? What are you looking for? What are the things you need to make sure you're doing? Because I think this is
and
really important.
and or avoiding doing. Like there are things that you should not be doing because you will be hidden forever.
Yes. So we're going to go through all of that from the beginning, from exactly when you're listing your item to when your buyer is searching for it. And we're going to let you know what it is you really need to be doing to make sure that you're showing up on Poshmark's algorithm. So why don't we start with listing the item? Like you found this item at the thrift store and now you're sitting down, you're getting ready to list it. What are the things you need to make sure you're doing to pop up when someone is looking for it?
I mean, I think the single most important thing, and this is true for I think every algorithm, eBay, Poshmark, Macari, all of them, the title matters. The title, the description, how you've categorized the item very much matters.
Yeah. So to kind of give you a little bit of explanation on how this is related to the algorithm is going to scan your title and your description for keywords that the buyer is putting in. And if you don't have said keywords, you don't show up. The algorithm doesn't know that you are related to what that buyer searched for, so you're not popping up. So again, different buyers are different. People search for different things. As you know, I search differently than Tyler searches. We all search
Mhm.
differently. So what this looks like can be different. But the mainstay things you have in your title and description are the brand, the color, the type of item, so pants,
Shoes,
shoes, whatever it's going to
dress.
be,
Yeah.
Size, I think, is really important because people will type that in. And then any kind of keywords that make this kind of like a unique item. If there's something that is really important to this item, I don't know if it's a worn on Taylor Swift, that's going to be important. Like things that are really important to the item that the buyer is likely to be looking for, make sure that's in your title and description.
To be fair, Taylor Swift might be the first thing. Before brand, I might write Taylor Swift.
Just all things Taylor Swift, just
Yeah.
make sure you're putting those in there. But yeah, so this is really important. And this is something you can change. You can iterate on. We do this all the time where I'll have an item that I'm like, it's not getting the interest I thought it would. Can you search for this item for me? And he will go and do that and let me
And
know
I
if
never I
it's
never find it.
yeah, we search very, very differently. So if you need a little bit of a spruce up, ask a friend to search for your item and see if they can find it. And maybe you can make some tweaks and live look for, are those tweaks making it show up better and better in the search? The best way to do this is to make sure that your friend that you're having search for it does not tell you what they are searching and you don't tell them what your title is. Because if you're just typing in someone's title, that's not a good test. You need somebody to search it for how they would search for this item. It's really, really important. And I think it's really been helpful for us in our business. Another thing while you're listing this item to look at is the categories that Poshmark has for items. So for example, under pants, there is a subcategory of leggings, and there's other subcategories. I think there's like, I don't remember them all off the top of my head, but
Well,
there's like activewear,
jeans is a
there's
separate category.
yeah, there's
So
different separate categories. So make sure that your item is put into the subcategory that you think is most likely to be searched for by the buyer. Because if you don't, and they are using that filter for a subcategory and you're not in it, they won't find you.
also, don't be afraid of bouncing around categories. So no one puts your item in a corner. Nobody puts baby in a corner. Put your item in front of different people, especially if it's an applicable category. Only do this if it's an applicable category. So if it's pants, but also leggings, you can switch between the two. You can, if it's a jean legging, you can switch it into jeans. Maybe that's what someone is looking for. Make sure that it's still appropriate, but try to get it in front of a different audience.
Yes, you can absolutely do that. And if you're a more organized human than me, you can even double list where you have one that's listed in the pants section and maybe another one that's listed in the jeans section. Maybe they're like jeggings or something like that. I am not so organized, so I don't love doing that anymore. But if you are, you can do that and see what is performing better and determine what was the best category to put that in.
I'm just having PTSD of you double listing and then selling multiple of them. So
Yeah,
like
it happened a few times. It
oh
happened.
no.
Another thing to look at when you are first listing this item is the price. And I don't know that we have actually talked about this on our channel, but we do this and we make sure that we do this, but I don't know that we've talked about it.
Well, price is very important. Price is probably one of the single most important driving factors on whether a person is going to buy an item, whether outright or as an offer. You want to make sure that it is in front of as many people as possible. So you want to make sure that it's right on the border between the Posh categories, the breakdowns.
Yeah. So, I mean, to start with, you obviously want to make sure you're pricing your items fairly. So, comp these items and look at sold comps, not listed. And also,
Mm.
don't do like my husband does and look at Google comps. Those are not real comps, please.
Those are the most misleading, depressing lies I've ever seen.
Yes. So, please look on Poshmark or eBay, whatever you're doing, look at sold comps for the love of God. From there, once you've determined, like, okay, I think this item sells for about 45 bucks. That's what I'm thinking. If that is the case and it sells for about 45 bucks, you want to list it for 50 on Poshmark. And the reason I'm not telling you to upprice your items because you want more money, there's a really good reason for this. So Poshmark has a breakdown of their prices. The breakdowns go under 25, 25 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 250, 250 to 500, and then $500 and over. So if I listed my item at $45 and my buyer went in and said, I'm going to filter to anything that is 50 and above, because I think 50 is a good price, my $45 item does not show up for that buyer. If the buyer filtered to 25 to 50, sure, I show up. But if I list the item at $50, my buyer can filter to 25 to 50 or 50 to 100, and I show up in both of those searches. So I am getting double the amount of people on these listings because people are using filters. People like to, filter by price. We all do it. And I
Sort high
don't
to
want
low or
to.
low to high, and then look at the things that I can never afford.
Right. So you don't
Yeah.
want to count yourself out just because of a $5 difference. You want to make sure you're on those cusps. Now, I'm not saying to up price your item that was a $26 item or $30 item and put it all the way up to 50. I'm not saying that. But if you are on that line, then make sure that you're hitting that next break point because it gets more eyes on your listing.
Just play with the line. Yeah, just hug the line. Just write down that.
Yeah, and I know, like, on eBay, for example, I will list things at, like, 49.87 because you wanna get below the person that has the you wanna have your price be the lowest price if you can, because that's how you get to the top of the search engine, and sometimes people have it at 49.99, so 49.87 gets me below them. So we do that kind of thing. Don't do that on Poshmark. You want to be on the breakpoints because you want to have more eyes on your items. The next thing in the listings, we still haven't even listed our item. Like, how long is it gonna take us to list this item?
Days, years, weeks, months. It's
It's forever.
forever, an eternity. It feels like an eternity.
It does. The next thing you want to be looking at is brands. And no, I'm not saying just make sure you put if you have Prana, then make Prana your thing. Yes, I mean, do that. But there's something a little bit more important that I don't know that a lot of people talk about.
Yes. So there are not all brands on Poshmark. So
Not all brands are equal.
not all brands are equal, especially on Poshmark. They have a selection, a respectable assortment of brands. I will grant them. But there are things that are just not going to show up.
Right. So, especially, this is really especially true with brands that have sub brands. So, an example I'm going to use for you is St. John. So, St. John, if you don't know, really popular for Santana knit, really great brand to sell. If you don't know, buy it.
We
It
sing its praises all of the time.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
However, there's a sub brand, St. John Sport. And now this isn't as great of a brand as St. John. And we want to make sure that if we're selling St. John Sport items, we're letting the buyer know that we're selling St. John Sport and not St. John because they are different and they are different price points.
And be very upset if you find out that you got a St. John Sport item when you thought it was St. John.
Right.
Yeah.
However, if I put St. John Sport in my brand section of the listing, my item will not come up when someone goes into the search bar and types St. John Sport blazer. It's nowhere to be found. And this is because the St. John Sport is not a searchable brand. There is a searchable brand that's similar to St. John Sport. I think it's like St. John Sport by Marie Gray, but that's only searchable if they type in St. John Sport and then they click on that brand. It still doesn't come up if you just type in St. John Sport blazer.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah.
That's too much typing.
It's
So
too much
just
work.
go with St. John.
So you make sure in this situation, you would put St. John Sport in the title, in the description, like make sure you've got it in all the places, but then you would list it as St. John in the brand because that is the searchable brand. And you can try this for different brands and go and see, is your item populating, and then kind of play around with it. But make sure that you know whether or not your brand is searchable. The best way to know that your brand is searchable is when you start typing it in, does it auto populate? If it does, it's likely a searchable brand. If it doesn't, you might want to do some research and make sure because your buyer might not be finding you. And the last thing when you are listing your item, and this isn't the last thing for the algorithm, but just to get this item on the platform, is to make sure you're not using any blocked or banned words.
Yes. So Poshmark has things that will just shadow ban your listing and it'll disappear and it will never be seen by anybody. And some of the words, there's a good reason. Some of them are just kind of random, but make sure that you're not using a prohibited word. The ones that we know right off the top of our head are pussy bow, sold out,
Nail polish,
nail polish,
perfume,
perfume.
other platforms like eBay or Mercari, anything like that. So this is something that's trial and error. We tried to find a full list of them, and there are a few like people that say that they have them out there. I don't know if anybody has a real full list of this. And please, in the comments, type more of them below if you know them. And people, go ahead and look in the comments. I'm sure there's plenty of people that know these words. But what this means is, like, for example, I had a pussy bow shirt. And pussy bow, if you don't know, is the bow around your neck that's attached to the shirt. I had one of those and it was just not getting any interest. And I was like, this is so weird because it's so adorable and it was a good brand and just didn't make any sense. And I went and figured out that it was not populating on search at all because I used the word pussy bow. And that is a banned word on Poshmark. And I mean, I guess it makes sense. I mean,
They don't want cursing, they don't want expletives on their platform. I
Yeah,
get it.
and it's AI that's looking at it, so they're not looking at context, so they're just looking at it saying, "Oh, that looks like it might be a bad word." So, instead, I had to go in and type I think I changed it to necktie or bow around the neck or something like that. I'm not exactly sure, but then suddenly I was getting interest and it populated, and I think actually it sold at this point. So,
Yeah,
it's
it sold basically right after you did the change.
yeah.
Yeah.
So make sure that you're doing that, checking to make sure there's nothing in there. If there is anything in there, go ahead and fix it and go ahead and see if other people have more of these words because there are a ton out there and they change all the time. It's just unfortunately a part of the algorithm. AI is looking at your listings and determining whether or not they want your buyer to see the item. So now the item is listed. We've got it
Oh,
out there.
that was quick. That was painless. The easiest process.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was a great time. Now your buyer's searching for the item, and we want to make sure that they are able to find you. So there are on Poshmark multiple ways to search. So our search right now defaults to just shared. Now I've heard throughout the community that people's default differently. So the main ones that I think most buyers are going to interact with would be just shared, relevance, and just in.
Yep.
Now just in, of course, is any item that you've just listed. Now, there is talk in the community that if you copy a listing, relist it, even if it's after the 60-day period of the holding, it doesn't show up because Poshmark doesn't like copies. That hasn't happened to me yet, but that is a rumor in the community, so keep that in mind. But any fresh listing is going to show up in Just In. That gives you new eyeballs on it. That's always a great thing to have happen. Just shared has to do with your sharing. How often are you sharing this item? Are you sharing it
Yeah.
once a day, twice a day, 10 times a day, once a week? How are you doing this? If you're not sharing your items, they are not showing up in just shared, which again, as I said, is both of our defaults.
Yes, and this is the elephant in the room. There's no way that sharing is not a critical component of the terms for the algorithm on Poshmark. They very much track how much activity you have, how long you're on the app. That is a very key component to their system. So that is likely a very important part.
Yes. So make sure you are sharing your items. If you haven't shared them in a while, please pause this video, go share the items, and then come back to us because that is so critical. If you're not sharing your items, you're not being seen. Now, the third one that some people say is their default. Now, we haven't experienced this, but I've heard it out there, and that is relevance. Now, relevance is a lot more complicated
It's gotten
than
better. I mean,
it's gotten
it's
way
better.
better.
It's better than the dumpster fire that it used to be.
Yeah. So if you go and look, and we can link that at the end of this at our algorithm video from, I think it's 2022.
Back when they destroyed everything and broke everything that we loved about the system.
Yeah, there was a lot going on there where items were stuck based on how relevant it was to your search. And even if it hadn't been shared in a long time, there's a lot happening. That seems to be resolved. The only stuck listings that I am seeing is promoted listings. Now, we could do a whole video about our feelings on how promoted listings are doing, how we feel about it since the beta, all of that stuff. We could do a whole thing.
That's
So
not
we're
the
not gonna
challenge. The challenge is to make sure that it is YouTube appropriate.
Yeah, we're not gonna go down that road right now. But if the item is promoted, needless to say, it's going to be above your listing. There is nothing you can do about that unless you are also promoting your listings. And even then, I believe there's tiers of promoting. There's a whole thing. It's a lot. It's a lot. But relevance is going to have to do with exactly how your buyer has typed in your item. And there is more factors than that. We haven't figured out all the factors. And if you want us to do a more in-depth video, we could probably experiment more on this. There's definitely more factors than just that. But in order to show up in a relevance search, you must have the words that your buyer has searched. So, for
Yeah.
example, we were doing a test on a pair of Crocs, and I had them listed as Crocs black and white tie-dye comfort shoes size 7, something to that effect. He typed in Crocs marble black and white clogs, something to that effect.
Size 7. What I
Size
did
7.
just a general search.
So
And
I had to adjust to make sure that I had marble in there because I didn't even think of marble when I was listing it. And I also had to make sure that I changed it to the clog category because I just had it in the shoe category. I guess I don't think of clogs or as Crocs as clogs. I just think I think of them as Crocs. Like it
it's
didn't
just
cross my mind.
make sure that it is matching the relevant terms, or it's think like your buyer. If you are thinking like the person looking for the item, you're more likely to sell that item.
Yeah, so after a few iterations of looking at, okay, what could he have put in there, whatever, I finally showed up on the page. Now, did I show up at the top? No, I didn't show up at the top. We
Getting there was an
tried.
accomplishment. I
Yeah,
mean, just getting to within 100 of the top was a bit of a challenge.
it was a challenge. So go ahead and find a listing that you don't think is getting the love it deserves and go and try and find it in Relevance. I would recommend using someone else's phone. There is some thought process out there that Poshmark is either more or less likely to show you your own listings. People have different feelings on that. So I think it's always just better to have a non-biased person doing it for you and looking it up and just see, are you showing up in their relevant search? Is that coming up, and how do you fix it if you're not? It's it takes some trial and error. Sometimes it's frustrating, but it's really important because if your buyer's search is defaulted to relevance, you want to show up.
I mean, the fact that you said sometimes and not all of the times is progress.
That is fair. Another thing I didn't mention about search, I just wanted to mention, is when you first go into the search section and you type in your item and you hit search, it is automatically going to have my size defaulted in. It's just going to filter you to your own size. Now, for me, I don't have all of my size stuff filled out. I don't really search that much on Poshmark, and I just don't. So that's not super useful for me because I don't have all my size stuff filled out. So I have to change that and get rid of it and put all sizes. But be aware that that is a default. So if you're not using a standardized size, like maybe you're typing in custom sizes or you're putting in like OS or NA and then typing it in the description, which a lot of people do, make sure that you're not doing that because it does default automatically to your size. So you want to make sure the size is accurate and you want to make sure that it is in the size box and you're not just, putting it in your description or other places.
Yeah, it's super annoying, and I wish they would change that. And I get why they don't, but it sucks.
Now, the last search section that we were talking about was just in. Now, just in's pretty easy to get into. List a new item. There you go. You win. If you're not able to list new items all the time, how are you going to get into just in? What can you do? So, one of the things I have been doing is tracking my items that are highly watched. So, you can do this by going into your closet, filtering to available listings, and then sorting to
Likers.
likers.
Yep.
And the top ones up there are the listings that have been liked a lot. Don't let those listings go stale. So what I've been doing is I've been keeping a list of all the items, and then during closet clear out, I've been notifying the buyers like, hey, here's my lowest price, and have been trying to get those items sold. If they don't sell for that, then I know those likers are stale likers. They've already been offered my lowest price and they don't want it. They haven't communicated with me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to relist that item. And I've been tracking how many of those items are being sold, and it's over 50% of the items are sold after they've been relisted. So those items are high value items to be relisting because you already know there's interest. So you can go in there, maybe you can futz with the price, maybe futz with some photos, futz with the description, whatever you want to do. But you can go in there and get those items into the just in category and hopefully get it sold pretty quickly because you already know there's interest there.
I think that also aligns with Poshmark's own metrics, and that has to be part of the algorithm. It's part of the black box of the algorithm where we can't really see anything.
Mm.
But they have mentioned that relisting items are significantly more likely to be sold.
Yes, because you're getting new eyes on them, fresh eyes on those items. So I definitely think it's really important. So if you are just posting up your items and you're just sharing them and you're not relisting them at all, and they've been sitting up there for 6 months, a year, whatever, make sure you go in and do that. Now, if it's less than 60 days since you've listed that item, you will have to screenshot the photos and copy and paste the description entirely. If it is under 60 days, you can use Poshmark's copy feature and just make sure you remove the word copy because that looks kind of ucky. But you can do that and it will show up in Justin if it's after 60 days, but it must be after 60 days. So I just want to make sure that that is clear and out there. Um, Posh Lens.
Posh lens.
So there is a new feature that I didn't really include in my search because
It's after everything the Posh has done for us that we didn't ask for.
yes. So as you know, we've been gone, and while we were gone, a new search feature popped up, which was called Posh Lens, and we took a look at it. And just to let you guys know, do we think buyers are using this? Do we need to optimize for this? What do we need to do? Spoilers. What do you think?
No.
What do you think about Posh Lens?
Google Lens is already a thing, and it already works provably better.
Yes. So what I will say is it is possible that your buyer is using Posh Lens. And if they are, the main thing you want to make sure you're doing if you want to pop up for a Posh Lens buyer is that you have clear, easy to scan photos. So what it's doing is it's basically scanning your photo and comparing it to whatever they took a photo of. So you want to have clear white backgrounds if you can, or at least no clutter, nothing that's going to like obscure
Yeah,
what the
just
thing is
a
scanning.
plain background, just
Yeah,
fine.
a plain background, and then make sure that the detailing on your item is clear and easy to see. So if you have a floral print, make sure you can see the floral print, that it's not like murky or low light or any of those things because otherwise the AI can't pick it up. But that's really the only thing you really need to do because this Posh Lens does not let the buyer put in a specific brand that they want, doesn't let them do much of anything really. It just does a match for match on whatever they've taken a photo of, and it's not even that great.
It's yeah, it's a close match. It's kind of just a hit or miss. Results may vary. Now, I do think that it's a fairly new feature, and it's standard of Posh to release something before it's actually friendly to use or helpful to use.
This is true.
So I do think that given enough time, it could be a very useful thing. But at the moment, it's not at all.
No, but if you wanna optimize for it, just make sure you have clear, easy to use photos. The best thing I would do is check and see if your item is showing up on Google Lens, especially if it's like a super, saturated item and, you do it and you type in Google Lens Mave or whatever, and that pulls the item, then you're good enough, like, as long as that works, but otherwise, there's not much to do here. I don't think a lot of people are using it yet, but stay tuned. It could be a useful feature in the future.
Yep.
All right. So now we're moving into the final category that we have here, which is like the black box. This is we're resellers and we're in the reseller community and we know that these things are happening, but there's no tangible data to back it up. So we want this to be taken with a big, big, big grain of salt and to know that nobody has these answers. We just have
Unless
personal experiences.
unless you're the person that physically wrote the Poshmark code,
Right.
you don't know what the code says.
Right. So these are all things that the community and us and everybody has experienced some kind of impact on our sales and on the algorithm itself, but we can't verifiably prove that that's actually being used. So we just want to make sure we caveat this. So the first thing I have in this category is ship time. So you cannot verifiably say that Poshmark is prioritizing you whether or not you're a fast shipper or not a fast shipper, but you can't not say that. And I've definitely noticed that when my ship time drops, I see less interaction. That could be causation without correlation. We don't know. But I will say, even if the algorithm wasn't prioritizing it, your buyer is. There are buyers that are absolutely looking at your ship time and determining whether or not they want to buy from you based on when they think they're going to get their item. So we can't say for sure the algorithm is prioritizing it. I think they are, but we can say your buyer is.
Yes. So there's two schools of thought on the next piece, which is the activity. So if you are very active, Poshmark, that is in everything that they've ever released, is one of the most important things that they mention is that how engaged and active people are. So they
Yes.
are tracking your activity. They are wanting to see you on the platform. There is a high degree of probability that that is tied into their algorithm and you will be rewarded. Sharing counts as activity. So that is one of the single biggest indicators that your item will sell.
Yeah. Now, there's people out there that have there are people out there that has devised methods like the 30-minute method, things like that, that will help you get your activity up if you need that. But I would say focus on getting your items shared, getting new items listed as often as you possibly can. And if you want to do more things, you can share other people's closets or follow people, all of those things. That does count as activity. And Poshmark is an app that needs activity to prove that people are using the app. So it is very likely that they are looking at that and prioritizing that. And again, as we said with the ship time, even if Poshmark isn't, your buyer is. There is a little indicator on your profile that lets a buyer know when you were last active. And if you weren't active in a few days, they're going to start questioning, is that item going to get shipped? So they are more likely to pick up an item from someone who has been active in the last few hours or at least within the last 24 hours because they know you're more likely to ship their item. So again, we can't prove that the algorithm cares. We think it does, but we can prove that the buyer does. Another thing that is in this kind of like black box category is your seller rating. So when you sell an item and the buyer comes back and rates the item, sometimes they'll leave like an actual written rating, but they do usually leave a star rating. That star rating lets Posh know how reputable of a seller are you and how good is the buyer experience when they interact with you. So Posh is tracking this for a reason. They are prioritizing people that have better seller ratings. Like there's no way they're not.
I can't imagine they're not. And if they, for some inexplicable reason, are not because they are just wholly incompetent, the buyers are definitely looking at that as a way to guarantee or get a better experience. They're just trying to look for a better process.
Yeah, no, and this is something really easy for you to make sure you have a high rating, right? You make sure that the item is described as accurately as possible. Any flaws, make sure that you're listing them, make sure your photos are super clear, make sure that when you ship the item, you are protecting the item and you're not just, sending it in a plastic bag, like you're doing the best you can to give the buyer the best experience possible and make sure that you are answering questions when the buyer asks. If the buyer reaches out to you and asks you something, don't just ignore them. Just good buyer experience, and you will likely have a pretty good rating. You won't have a perfect rating. Anybody who tells you they have a perfect 5-star rating would never had any low ratings, they're lying. They're just you're gonna run across a buyer who just gives you a poor rating because they just do. We just had someone recently who gave us a poor rating because a sandal stretched out. A sandal with no sides, a flip flop, mind you. It was stretched out, so they gave us a 3-star rating. It's like,
Some
I don't
people
know how
can't
you
be
can fix that.
happy, but the general rule of thumb is to under promise, over deliver, so that it is a better experience than they were expecting, so that they're going to be happy with giving you a 5-star review. Under promise, over deliver. That's the name of the game because you want people to have a very positive experience when they're buying an item.
Yeah. And then the last 2 in this black box category, kind of go together, so I'm just gonna say them together, but cancellations as well as cases. So I think anybody who has been selling on Poshmark will tell you that if they have to cancel an item or they have a case opened, they notice a dramatic decrease in activity. That is pretty true across the board. Everyone feels this way. Again, there's no tangible proof that Poshmark actually does anything when this happens, but it makes sense that they would, given that buyer experience is really important to them and poor buyer experience is definitely happening if one of those 2 things are happening, right? So first of all, cancellations. If you, I don't know, double sell an item, guilty, done it. If you find a flaw on an item, you found out you maybe described an item the wrong way, any of those things, you have to cancel the item. Poshmark isn't going to like that because the buyer is not going to be happy. No buyer is going to be thrilled in that situation. So it is likely that they are going to deprioritize you. Now, I don't think they do it on the first time, but if it's a habit, I think that's probably pretty fair to say. Same thing with cases. If a buyer opens a case because the item wasn't as described, or they just open a case because they want to open a case, Poshmark isn't going to be too thrilled about that. And if you make that a habit, it's very likely that they are going to deprioritize your listings, at least temporarily. So again, all of these things in this category are not provable. There's no
Yeah.
tangible proof, but it is very likely based on what we know about Poshmark that they are looking at these things. So try and make sure you're minimizing the issues that you have on the platform and make sure that you're prioritizing activity, good buyer experience, and getting those listings up in the correct way with the right keywords and the clear photos, all of those things to make sure you have the best chance at making sales.
Yeah, I mean that you want to minimize the problems and the reasons why you're not going to get in front of people and maximize your visibility. Like that's the name of the game. If somebody can't see it, they can't buy it. So you have to do everything that you can to within the rules game the system to your advantage.
Right. Now, if you are a successful reseller and you're listening to this and you're thinking, you don't have to do any of those things because all you need to do is just find really good items at a thrift store and just post those. That is a train of thought out there. And I just want to say that we are giving these tips because not everybody can find the $500 item that they picked up for $1 at a thrift store every single day.
I
So
mean, it happens occasionally.
it,
Like
it's great.
it's
But
happened once or twice in your years of selling.
But if you are not that person and you are selling a lot of bread and butter items or a lot of other items that have competition, this is going to be really important for you. And you're going to have to make sure that you are doing all of these things. But yes, if you are finding $1 items that sell for $500 at a thrift store every single day, ignore us. there's no point in sharing this video, no point in telling anyone about it because
And also tell us where you live so I can go there and steal them.
yeah, exactly. So make sure that you are doing these things. If you know someone else that is not finding those crazy banger items that might need these tips and might want to know what they're doing wrong and how to fix the algorithm, how to make more sales, share this with them, share this in groups that you're in, and leave us comments and let us know this was helpful for you and what else you might want to know. Is there anything you want
Yeah.
to deeper dive on? Is there anything you want like
Yeah.
more information? Let us know.
If you're frustrated, let us know what's going on in your world and we might have an answer for you. Like we are more than happy to try to sit there and help people figure it out.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love doing the most. So if you found this useful, drop a like on it, leave a comment and let us know. And then make sure that you check out the video from 2022 where we broke down all the changes in the Poshmark algorithm and what you could do to fix it then and compare and contrast. So go check that out right over here.